Hey YouTube, what's up? Dr. T here, and welcome to the Altcoin Express and my hometown, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Said at the start of 2018 that the first location for a track of Hyperloop will be announced at some point this year, and that also the first passenger pod will be ready by this summer. Can you give us an update?
Yeah, so we had actually a pretty busy year. We just started construction of our R&D center in Toulouse. I don't know if you've seen the footage, but the big tubes arrived, and we're getting ready now to build 2 tracks there. Right after that, we announced the location of the first commercial line, which will be in the Emirates in Abu Dhabi. We will start out with a 10-kilometer line that later on should be connected to a larger network. That's together with Aldar, a big real estate company that has the land there. So everything's really exciting, and we're moving forward quite well. The capsule has been put into production last year already. So it's being manufactured by Cabures, which is a supplier for Airbus and Boeing. They're manufacturing airplane fuselages, so it's basically almost the same as a Hyperloop capsule. And the capsule will be ready around July. Then it will come to Toulouse for assembly and integration into the system. It will be optimized on the track in Toulouse before then going into the first commercial system.
You also said that the first passengers could use the system within just 3 years. Is this not still too ambitious?
Well, we are working already on all the safety regulations. We have been working with our partner Munich Re on the insurance concept. They actually said last year that they're going to be able to insure the system. So, of course, regulations might not be ready by then, so you still might have to sign a waiver to use it, but the system is going to be up and running, and you and me, if you sign the waiver, will be on the Hyperloop.
And by when do you expect commercial and public use, and in which regions and countries are you planning to roll out this transportation system first?
So Abu Dhabi is now the first commercial line. We are working with several governments around the world right now on different feasibility studies. The feasibility study is always the first step, right? You need to answer certain questions that everybody has. How much is it going to cost to build? How much is it going to cost to operate? How many people are you going to be able to move? Where is it going to go along? How fast is it going to be? So all of these things are being answered in those feasibility studies. And of course, they're also the first step to talk about the regulatory framework. The regulatory framework is probably the biggest hurdle. So you need to create a completely new set of laws. It's not a train, it's not an airplane. And that's what's necessary in order to move into commercialization. So working with our partners, TÜV, so TÜV, and Munich Re is very important in order to get to a commercial system.
Talking about the political regulations and also political will, where does most of the resistance come from at this point?
Actually, to be honest with you, we don't have much resistance. The issues that we're solving is not so much about speed. Speed is almost like a side effect of the technology, because we're inside a low-pressure environment, we can move much faster. Of course, in order to move fast, you have to go very straight, so it's very similar to a high-speed rail alignment. But the real important part, the blue ocean, is that we're able to build a commercial system that makes economic sense. So there's no rail line, no metro line in the whole world that's profitable. The Hyperloop, because it has very low operational costs, can be profitable in a very short time span. All the feasibility studies that we have done so far show return of investment between 8 to 12 years. And that's something that has never been seen so far in a train or in a subway.
Now, it seems that the first track will be operational in Abu Dhabi by the year around 2020, as far as I can tell, and would connect the cities of Abu Dhabi and Dubai as the first pilot project, and then roll out in other countries in the Gulf.
No, so actually Abu Dhabi, Dubai is not planned at this time. It's in Abu Dhabi. Its first part is a 10-kilometer track that later on will connect to a network inside the Emirates.
Now, the idea of Hyperloop and super fast transportation but basically comes from the Tesla founder and tech billionaire Elon Musk. How is your relationship with Elon?
So actually the idea is much older. So already in the 1800s, there was a first attempts to build, tube travel. The first patent for a train inside a vacuum dates back to 1904. In the US, there were several attempts to build a system like that. Switzerland had a project called Swiss Metro, which was actually very similar to what we are doing today. It was underground tunnels, low pressure environment, large maglev trains. So it was just very expensive at that time. But it's not a new idea. So Elon was the one who proposed this idea and basically said, hey, we should do something better than what's out there today. But when he said that he was too busy with Tesla and SpaceX, he also said that he wanted someone else to pick it up, and that's basically what we did. He's not involved in what we're doing.
Does he still have some kind of a say in the project, though?
Well, he's not working with us, so we're completely independent. We're working in a very unique way. We have over 800 team members all around the world, 50 different companies and a very large community. Elon is working on the Boring Company, which is doing a new technology when it comes to boring tunnels, which is probably something very complementary to what we are doing, as well as, of course, a space competition, so working with universities and, getting all of those students from all around the world to concentrate and building new technologies that are around the Hyperloop. So it's, he's definitely supporting the community and the movement.
Now, the Hyperloop project and concept basically transports passenger pods through vacuum tubes using magnets and leviation. Now, which are some of the biggest construction challenges that you're facing at this point?
Well, when you build something like the Hyperloop, you need, first of all, secure the land. So that's always, the right-of-way is always the biggest challenge, especially when it comes to doing something that's 300, 400 miles long, right, 600 kilometers.
And especially in the Gulf Arab region. I mean, the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, for example, faced the same problem, that you're building on sand and the soil is not very stable.
Yeah, it's, those things can be solved. That's not a big issue. At the end, those problems are not that big because those are problems that you already have every single day when you're building a freeway, when you're building a train section, when you're building, as you say, a big building, right? So there's a lot of engineering challenges. There's a lot of land acquisition challenges that you need to overcome. From a construction point of view, the system is actually very simple. It's basically a tube on pylons or on the ground, or you even tunnel and put it underground. And you have vacuum pumps along the tracks that are every 10 kilometers that takes the air out. And the train goes inside on a track, so the capsule, right, and moves depending on the route alignment up to just below the speed of sound.
Now, Elon Musk, actually talking about sound, recently tweeted that these pods could reach half the speed of sound and come to a full stop within just 1.2 kilometers. That's just crazy. Is that not just too fast as well?
Well, it's definitely too fast for you and me to sit inside, right? So he's actually referring to a test that they're doing on the SpaceX track, which is the one that they're using for the SpaceX competition. There's not a lot of space, so you need to accelerate much faster than you would do normally. And of course, you have to brake really fast as well. It's, I would say it's more about showing that you can, rather than necessarily something that really has to do with a system. Because at the end, acceleration needs to be something very gentle and soft, needs to be something that works for a 2-year-old as much as for an 80-year-old, right? Not only for people that want to have a thrill. So you don't feel speed, you only feel acceleration, deceleration. So it's really more optimized for comfort.
You mentioned that the testing center is based in Toulouse, France, and this is also where you're going to assemble and produce some of the parts. How far is this, manufacturing process there going, and are you planning to produce and manufacture everything from there because you already have a kind of aviation infrastructure there in Toulouse?
So what we actually do is we use a completely new model, I would say. we rely heavily on partners. We don't necessarily produce anything. Kabur is manufacturing the capsule, and then, of course, to integrate it into the system, that's what's going to happen in Toulouse. You need to adjust and bring everything together. Toulouse is an R&D center that allows us to work with our partners, that allows us to work with research partners, maybe other Hyperloop companies that want to test out new technologies. You just need a full-scale system somewhere where you can also test new construction methods, new materials, right? So that's what Toulouse is about. It's an R&D center for everything from, I would say, version number 2 to version number 220. Version number 1 is ready, and that's being built, and that's also what's going to be built at the first commercial track.
Your budget and financials are not so transparent. In 2016, you mentioned that you were able to raise about $100 million from individuals as well as groups of investors. What does your budget look like at this point? Do you need another round of capital fundraising?
So we work in a little bit different way. As I mentioned earlier, we're using a completely new methodology, so our burn rates are very, very low. We rely heavily on our team members, heavily on our partners. So all of these companies are investing in-kind services. They're bringing their knowledge, their IP into the company, and are receiving participation in the company. In terms of just cash, we have raised to date roughly $33 million, and still plenty of it is there. We really just use our cash to actually build systems where we don't need it for research, which is great.
So you're still on solid ground for the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, there's going to be other, investment opportunities, and of course, as we're moving forward, when we start building the different projects, those are going to be financed, of course. But I'm not sure that I can really legally answer your question about ongoing fundraising.
Now, would Hyperloop also work in a country like Switzerland, where you have a small landmass, high mountains, and a lot of lakes?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, the challenges are a little bit different, right? When you have mountains, you might need to tunnel a little bit more. So, to be honest with you, you need to do a feasibility study. But I would say you can probably use a lot of the infrastructure that's already there. Again, Hyperloop has two main advantages. On one hand, it's about the economical viability, so it makes economical sense. And on the other side, it's the speed. So the economical sense is always there. It's cheaper to operate than a railway or a subway. So, and then and that's a big question here, if based on the terrain, you can have a lot of straight lines, you're even able to get up to high.
Dirk, we are here in St. Gallen. This is in the very eastern part of Switzerland. Going from here by train to Geneva on the western side of Switzerland, it takes you about 4 hours. How long would this take on a Hyperloop?
So it really depends on how the route would look like. Of course, if you go very straight, it's 1,200 kilometers an hour. So you would be there within, a very short time frame. But very likely, you will have to slow down with the mountains. You will have to tunnel a little bit. So it's going to take a little bit longer. But still, it's I would say you're way below the hour.
And the Hyperloop system, how environment friendly is it?
So the whole system is actually completely green. It's we use alternative energy. So we use solar, wind, kinetic energy through regenerative braking. And in some climates, even geothermal. To produce, depending on the route, of course, even more energy than we use. So basically, we use the same right-of-way to have solar panels on top of the track, to have wind generation of power. It really allows us to have a little bit lower operational cost, but that depends always on where you're building. It's a completely electric, so you don't really have any emissions. And we're even when we're looking into the construction materials that we're using to try to be as sustainable as possible.
And how convinced are you that this will revolutionize the way we commute and transport goods, that this is, the future of transportation?
So it's not only the Hyperloop itself, but it's about how you integrate it into existing systems, how it connects to the other modes of transportation.
Could it be easily connected, let's say, to the Swiss Federal Railways, SBB, for example, or would we need a total technological shift and adapt to all these systems?
So we're a technology company, and we would license our technology to SBB, for example. They then would build Hyperloops. It's not our goal to build Hyperloops everywhere. It's more working with partners together to bring the Hyperloop to market. So you cannot use, I mean, of course, you have to build a new infrastructure, right? Because you have to have the tubes. But you can use the same right-of-ways as long as they're fairly straight, which in many cases is a case. So, but it's more important than that. It's that we need to look into first and last mile issues and connecting and creating a better passenger experience, right? I think that today, if you think about how we travel, it's terrible. Nobody really enjoys traveling anymore. We're in 2018. We have the chance to build the transportation systems the way you would do in 2018. And we do so by using technology and innovation. We're building a better system, a better passenger experience, something that's not based on classes, for example, something that uses the time better. In our vision, the Hyperloop might not even cost anything, because the business model of the ticket is something that is, very old. It's something that might not make sense today anymore. You can create much more money, and you can make more money with a different value chain. If you're monetizing on the time that the passenger spends inside the train, inside the airplane, inside the car, inside the Hyperloop, now you have a completely new opportunity and also a much better passenger experience.
Talking about prices, have you talked about, ticket prices and done any math already?
Yeah, of course. We have done several feasibility studies.
So how much would a Hyperloop ticket cost?
Well, it always depends on the route. The capex is actually very low, so we have very low operational costs. All of the feasibility studies that we have done show a return of investment between 8 to 12 years. And they all have been done comparing it basically to bus tickets. So
that's incredibly cheap.
Well, that's a big advantage of the Hyperloop. You're moving inside a low-pressure environment. Creating or maintaining this low-pressure environment costs us 25 kilowatt-hour on over 10 kilometers, which is roughly $3 in America. So it's very low to maintain the vacuum. And then you're moving the train inside, the energy costs are very, very low. It's completely operated by a computer system with human supervision. So it just makes more economical sense.
There are so many advantages, be it ticket pricing or the environmental friendliness or the kind of rollout opportunities. Why are not more investors and governments jumping on this project?
Well, actually, there are plenty. There are plenty of governments that want to talk to us. There are plenty of investors that are talking to us, of course.
But how serious are they?
No, I think they're fairly serious. It just takes some time. I mean, you need to have the regulations. So it's really difficult when you sit down with the Minister of Transportation, for example. They would love to build, but of course it's not at that point yet, right? So you just need to get to that point. So Abu Dhabi is a very important step to have the first commercial line, to create a regulatory framework, to work with Munich Re, our insurance partner, to create this insurance concept. All of these things are important to move it over into commercial state. And that's a big hurdle. The technology has been around for quite some time. That's not the issue. It was more about integrating, bringing them all together. In order to commercialize it now, you need to work with the governments. And luckily, we work with several governments around the world. They're very supportive. I've met personally with many of the leaders of the world.
Angela Merkel, for example, as well. Vladimir Putin.
Yes, and he's very supportive, for example. Erdogan, when we ask for support, we ask for support in the regulation. And of course, we're in the Emirates, and we're working with the royal family. We have
Sheikh Mohammed is very a big visionary.
Yeah, and we're in Abu Dhabi, so we're working with Sheikh Al Nahyan. Sheikh Falah bin Zayed Al Nahyan is actually part of our company. He's our official partner and sponsor in the Emirates. He's a brother of the ruler of the Emirates, and it's definitely the right region to do these things.
There have been a number of fatal accidents when it comes to self-driving vehicles. Hyperloop will also be driverless, and how safe is this technology?
So the technology of a train that's without a driver has been around for quite some time. And, you know, it's much, much simpler than a car. A car is in a free environment, things are changing, things are moving around. We're inside a tube. We're inside a tube that's in a low pressure, so there's nobody inside. It's much easier to make that safe, of course.
Now, Hyperloop Transportation Technology is not the only player when it comes to Hyperloops. Richard Branson of Virgin has also started to develop the Virgin Hyperloop One. Now, what about this competition for the Hyperloops? Who is faster than the other?
I don't know if it's really about being faster. I mean, Richard Branson joined Hyperloop One. Hyperloop One was a company that started 2 years after us. And,
has he actually copied your technology and your concept?
No. I mean, we work in a very unique way, and Hyperloop One started out roughly 2 years after us. They raised a lot of money. They're working in a very traditional way. I think that it's not so much about a competition. We're all going into the same direction.
But he wants his Hyperloop One to be up and running in just 3 years' time. So he would be basically winning the race.
I don't think it's a race, because everything is, you know, everybody is working in the same direction. I personally, based on what's out there, we work with right now much more governments around the world. We have been working with our insurance company, where we're ready to build full-size prototype. We're now doing our R&D center in Toulouse. We're doing the first commercial line. So for now, we might be a little bit ahead, but I think the companies are, you know, all of them are moving in a great direction, and hopefully there's a way to all work together at one point, because that's really what's needed. We're not really competing against each other. I mean, maybe you are competing when you're talking to an investor, but many investors actually also like to invest in both companies. What you're really competing against is the status quo, right? What's out there. And so for us, it's important that they are successful. And the worst thing that can happen to us is that they fail. And I think it's the same thing on the other hand. So, you know, I always say that we are celebrating their wins as well. I think that's important.
It's one community. Now, sky seems to be no longer the limit. Virgin Galactic, for example, looks at space travel as well, has launched the new spacecraft Unity. Elon Musk has his aerospace company SpaceX. How will we commute in a decade, in a century from now, Dirk, if you look through a crystal ball?
Well, I think I hope it's going to be much more comfortable than what it is today. You know, we have a very large effort where it's about passenger experience. We work with several partners on creating something that hasn't really been done so far, by using our time a little bit better, seeing traveling more as an opportunity to do things and even monetize on them and have experiences. I think that's the most important part. At the end, how you're being moved is not as important. Hopefully we don't have to move that much anymore, right? Maybe we can do this virtually, and it works just fine. You are such a
jet setter. I'm sure that you would like to travel more conveniently and also a bit less, be based more at home maybe too. Now, Elon Musk, for example, has you know, the SpaceX lunar tourism mission going on, and it's all about the talk of space tourism, space travel as well. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think we need to push our boundaries, right? So I think that's important. He wants to go to Mars. I don't.
Would you like to spend your holiday out in space at some point, or are you more grounded?
Well, I think